So I came across these water landing floats for the DJI Mini 2 on Amazon, and I'm just super curious, will these work? Will my drone actually land safely on water, or will it sink? You'll find out later in the video, because I headed to some nearby water to put these through their paces and find out if they actually work. Let's jump right in. So before I get into the video and we look at everything you need to know about these floats and if they actually work, I just want to say if you're new around here and you haven't subscribed to my channel, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and make sure the notification bell's on so you don't miss any of my other videos. And if you learn something new and you enjoy content like this, please make sure to hit that like button. It means a lot to me and to the channel. So what are these exactly? Well, simply put, they are floats which attach to your DJI Mini 2 with the idea that you will be able to safely, although we'll get into that later in the video, land this drone in water. The product itself is a plastic cage. It comes in two parts. It has a top clamp and a bottom clamp, and that basically attaches these legs to your DJI Mini 2. And then onto the legs, you can see that these two foam floats attach. So it basically attaches two floats to the bottom of your drone. Now, if you're watching this video at any point in time and you want to pick these floats up for your own DJI Mini 2, the link is in the description down below. It's not a sponsored video. I picked these up out of my own curiosity. So how do the floats attach to your drone? Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to open the arms of your drone up and then place the bottom part of the cage into your drone. It locates itself quite nicely. There's little notches that fit into the drone vents. And then you place the top part of the clamp over the top of the drone, and you get two little screws which secure the top and bottom part of the clamp together. And there is a little bit of rubber underneath the top clamp to make sure that this doesn't damage your drone. Then once these clamps are secure, it's basically quite a simple process of attaching the floats to the plastic cage, although the arms which hold the floats to the cage are quite sharp, and so what you'll find is that the arms actually start to cut into the floats, so you have to just be very careful so that you don't actually damage the floats when you're attaching them to the cage itself. Now, the instructions say once you've got the floats onto the cage to take the drone and to place it in some water to check for balance. Now, I find that it was easy to check the balance on the water. You would simply put it in the water, and if it was tilting slightly forward or back, then you would move the floats slightly forward and back. But I found for when it came to taking off, getting the weight distribution right was really tricky and made for some interesting takeoffs. More on that later in the video. Now, before I go any further in this video, I want you just to pause it quickly and drop a comment down below as to what you think will happen when it comes to actually landing this on water. Do you think it'll land safely, or do you think it will be a bit of a fail? Pause the video before you watch the rest of it and drop a comment down below if you think these will actually work. So does this make the drone heavier than 250 grams? Well, the short answer is yes. With these attached, your drone weighs 282 grams, which means you can no longer fly it in the A1 category. So that's something you need to be aware of whenever you attach these to your drone. So how does the drone fly with the floats attached? Because aside from takeoff and landing, the second most important thing is how accessories like these affect your drone in the air. Because you're not going to feel confident landing if the accessories make your drone hard to handle, and also it's just not safe to fly if you're flying with accessories which are making your drone unstable. My main concern when I first seen these attached was, is any sharp movement in the air going to potentially cause the drone to roll over and crash? More than that in a second. So the first time I took off to check out how this flew in the air, I took off from land, just to build a bit of confidence. And the first thing I noticed was that it didn't require payload mode on, which is a mode that you have to switch on when you're carrying a payload. For example, a 360 camera on top, or even some safety cages require payload mode on, and this restricts how far away you can fly and how high you can fly. The drone didn't require that on with these floats. And the drone didn't also automatically go into payload mode, as it can do with some accessories once it recognizes it's flying with something attached. And the first thing I noticed when flying was the drone was definitely working harder to stay stationary. I think because of the large surface area the drone now had compared to when you don't have something like this attached, that the wind was just affecting the drone so much more, and it was pulling it around in the air quite a bit, and so the drone was definitely working harder to stay stationary. But it was staying stationary and stable. But like I say, you could just know that it was working harder to stay stationary. Now, something else that I noticed after a few takeoffs from water was that the floats are quite absorbent. And as you're flying in the air, they're dripping water. This isn't that big of a problem, but the propellers actually blow some of the water back up around the drone. And so if you're using these, you need to make sure that you land it quite often and that you microfiber your drone just so it doesn't get too wet. But it was definitely blowing the drips up around the drone. So after I done a few very slow maneuvers, building up confidence slowly, I started to do more dramatic turns and banks. I even tried out sport mode. And even doing aggressive strafing left and right, I found that these floats were surprisingly stable. The drone showed no signs of not being able to handle them. It showed no signs of any instability. And even with the sharpest and most extreme of movements, I found the drone to be extremely stable with these fitted, which gave me great confidence in using them further. So does the drone float with these attached? Which is quite important because you're not going to land in water if they don't float. So before attempting a landing or takeoff, I wanted to be sure that these floats actually kept the drone afloat in water. And so what I did was I just went over and I placed the drone in some water myself. And it did float as expected, but I noticed a problem straight away. The floats seemed to absorb water very quickly. So the drone would start to sink over time and you had to keep lifting it out to let the water drain. Even worse was when different parts of the floats would absorb water at different rates. So I found in my experience, the back of the floats, and this was maybe due to an imbalance in the water, but the back of the floats would take on water faster than the front. And so over time in the water, the drone would start to sink slowly into the water backwards. So let's talk about taking off in water, because before you can land, well, you have to take off. Now, the first time I attempted to take off from water, I started the props and I pushed up to be able to take off. And as I did, I noticed that the drone was starting to really bank forward. And so I freaked out and I pulled back down to abort the takeoff. Subsequent attempts, it kept doing the same thing. It was just, it looked as if the drone was just going to do that into the water. Just as it was taking off, it was just leaning forward so much. But eventually I built up the confidence to just go for it and go for a takeoff. And although it did bank forward in the takeoff, it just pulled itself straight up into the air and it actually took off beautifully, stably, and very safely. So I put this down to the balance of the floats as to why that happens. And that's what I meant earlier in the video when I said it's quite hard to balance the floats, because even if you get the balancing right straight away, as it takes on water at different rates, it throws the balance out. So you'd be constantly adjusting them. And you just need to be aware of that when you're taking off, it is going to look like it might tip into the water, but once it actually pulls the floats up out of the water, it's completely stable and it's completely fine. I attempted several manual takeoffs using the sticks, and I also attempted auto takeoff, and both worked perfectly. And now for landing, and I admit, it took a bit of time before I was happy to attempt a landing with these on. Not probably through any fault of the product, but through my own confidence of landing in water with your drone just seems a little bit risky in my opinion. Now the first attempt at landing I done manually, and I will admit I flew it down in very slowly and I flew it down in very close to the water's edge. The drone came down in and it landed perfectly. Again, my point about not letting it sit too long in the water stands, because if you leave it too long in the water, it starts to slowly sink as the floats take on water, so be aware of that. And then next I tried auto landing, because I'd read online about people using accessories like this and people flying over water with accessories like this, that auto landing doesn't work, or the drone won't allow you to auto land. But in my experience, auto landing worked perfect. The drone landed perfectly in the water. Now when it comes to landing further out of water, don't. It's just too risky. Using a product like this out in sea is just too risky in my opinion with your drone. So what is my summary of this product for the Mini 2? Does it work as advertised? Can you land your Mini 2 in water? Well, the short answer is yes, they do work as advertised, and yes, you can land your Mini 2 safely in water using these. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you've learned something new, please make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new around here and haven't subscribed, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. And please make sure the notification bell's on so you don't miss any of my other videos. As always, I appreciate you watching this one to the end. Thank you so much.